Hello and welcome to week 1 unit 6 of our openSAP course SAP Cloud Application Studio for SAP Business by Design. My name is Guru Prasad Dorai and I'll be your presenter for this unit. In the previous unit, we implemented business logic for script files for various events and actions. In this unit of scripting deep dive, we will see how to implement business logic using SAP predefined built-in functions and reuse libraries. Also, we will create custom reuse library and functions. Let me give you a quick brief about SAP reuse library and reuse functions. SAP Cloud Application Studio framework provides predefined built-in functions and reuse libraries. Reuse library is a container which can have multiple reuse functions. A reuse function has the code with the parameters importing and returning parameters. Below are the three libraries which are provided out of the box: the basic reuse libraries for business areas and built-in functions. The basic reuse libraries of the scripting language extend the scope and functions that you can use to implement business logic in the SAP Cloud Application Studio. The keyword import APSL is mandatory to use these reuse libraries in the scripting language. Examples for these reuse libraries are context, number range, change history, web services utilities, etc. Reuse libraries for business area provide additional, very specific services to the scripting language that are relevant for functions in the corresponding application areas for SAP Business by Design. The keyword import with the namespace of the specific business area is mandatory to use the reuse library in the scripting language. Examples of these reuse libraries are address snapshots, date and time utilities, and etc. The next one is about built-in functions. The built-in functions of the scripting language extend the scope for the implementation of a business logic in a similar way to the reuse library. Here, the keyword import of namespace is not mandatory. For example, the generic built-in functions, built-in functions for codes, built-in functions for strings, and etc. Apart the standard reuse library and reuse functions, partners or customers can create custom reuse library and reuse functions to organize complex code in the solution or to reuse the code in the script files. Custom reuse function is created in two steps: define the signature of the function, define the business logic in the script file. The custom reuse functions can be created for the existing reuse library or for a new custom reuse library. With this brief overview about reuse library and functions, let me log into SAP Cloud Application Studio and show you how to use the standard reuse library functions in the scripting language. Also, we would go ahead and create a custom reuse library and a reuse function. So, here I am in the SAP Cloud Application Studio. I have logged into my solution. We had created the script files for all the actions and the events. Right now, I have enhanced the script file for the job profile BO on the event before save. I have enhanced the script file with the standard reuse library with the name context. The context, for example, if I have to show you this, context is a reuse library where it provides me the list of these functions where I could get the current identity UUID, I could get the global date time, system date time, and I also could choose the user date time, and also I could check what is the current system URL and the other options. So, here I have used the context reuse library with the function get current identity UUID. This would then ensure that the locked on person's identity UUID would be passed on to this variable, and then I am querying on the identity BO. For this identity BO to execute the query, I need to have the import namespace of the identity management global where this business object resides, and then I pass on the current identity UUID here execute the query, and this is where we set the system administrative data, that is the created by and the changed by based on these conditions. So, this is how you could make use of the standard reuse library and functions provided by SAP on the context. Moving on, I would show you the other part where you could also use the other options which is available, like the number range. So, here I have created an object number range of the type job application, and in the next line I am drawing a new number for every instance of the job application BO. So, this is how you could make use of standard reuse library and function in your scripting language. Now, I would move ahead and create a custom reuse library and a function. So, for that I click on the add new item, I select reuse library, let me give a name here, let us say I give it as a custom reuse library, click on add. So, this now creates a .library file in the solution. So, as explained in the presentation, a reuse library could contain many reuse functions. So, I would go ahead and create one function, and let me say this as identity, and the parameter would be identity UUID, importing parameter, of the type UUID, and the returning parameter as name, change this to returning parameter, and I provide the name to it, the data type. Let me select language independent long name, and I click on next, and I click on finish. So, I go ahead and click on save. Now, once you click on save, the AppShell file for this reuse function would be created. As you can see, I have an AppShell file here for this reuse function. I could go ahead and double click and implement my business logic in this AppShell file. I already have the code here. Yeah. So, let me explain what this reuse function is going to do. As you see, in many of the places I have tried to query the current identity UUID and try to find out who is the business partner who has modified or created the business object instance. So, hence instead of coding the same in different places, what I am going to do is I am going to create a reuse library and a reuse function, and this reuse function would be called in places where I want to find who is the business partner who has changed the business object instance. So, this is what it does. So, I have imported the namespace of the identity BO and the business partner where the employee is, and then I pass the I query on the identity BO, pass the respective parameters of the current identity UUID, and finally obtain the result in this variable, and then I am exporting or returning this parameter. So, I go ahead and click on save. So, once this is saved and activated, you could then go ahead and consume this reuse function in your scripting, so that you could avoid having the same code in different places. So, now let's see how to go ahead and do this. Let us assume that this is one of the place where I want to use the reuse function. So, this is how we do it. So, here I am creating the identity UUID which is of the type get current identity UUID, and I am passing this identity UUID as an importing parameter to the reuse library. So, now you could see that the custom reuse library would be called with the importing parameter identity UUID, and with this it would go ahead and execute this piece of code, and it would return the business partner name, which would then be available in this particular variable. So, this is how you could go ahead and create a custom reuse library and a reuse function to organize your code in a much better way. With this, we come to the end of week 1, unit 6 on scripting deep dive, and below is a summary of the unit. We got an insight on SAP reuse library and functions, created custom reuse library and reuse functions, how to consume standard reuse functions in scripting language. The code snippet for the script files and the process of creating reuse library and reuse functions are available as part of the exercise for this unit. Please make use of it and try implementing them for your solution. In the next unit, we will see how to create user interface for the business objects. Until then, take care and have a good day. Thank you.